Embracing Soul's Journey. This is episode 2. And what we're going to talk about today is going a little bit deeper around spirituality and religion. And I think in part it's because many of us have had our own journey, right? When we talk about journey,
yes.
Had our own journey about how religion influenced us or not as we started to develop our spiritual selves and really get to the place of remembering who we truly are. And so do you have any of you want to start about your own personal journey, your experience with religion? Let's start there. Let's start with what your experience with religion was for you.
I'm Tina, and I would have to say that I was born and raised Catholic, and I just considered myself, I believe in God, and that's my spiritual. I have my own relationship with God now. I found that with my abilities and also with my children too, I had a hard time connecting with so many rules of the Catholic type of religion. And when I was little, it wasn't encouraged for you to have a relationship with God. It was you go there, you listen. Well, first of all, as a child, I listened to Mass in Latin up until, I want to say 10 or 11.
You went to a Latin Mass?
I went to Latin Masses. I had no idea what they were saying. And as a child, yes. And as a child, you had to sit there and listen. And if you didn't, then you would get pinched. And so you would just kind of sit there. And so I wasn't actively participating in it. Even though catechism, it was still the same thing. You sat there, you listened, you just kind of like schools now, where the traditional schools where you just do the worksheets and that you turn it in, and you really weren't active participating in it. So that's and then it kind of went into Spanish speaking. I still wasn't a bilingual speaker at that time, so I had a hard time with that too as well. So I had a lot of misconnecting with the Catholic religion. And I remember at a very young age, in order to get my first communion, I had to go in front of the priest and do my confession. And I remember there was a whole line of kids, and I remember holding up the line because I was like, I don't know what I need to tell you about my sins. And I didn't understand why I needed to tell this human that, things that I did bad. And I just remember the priest going, just kind of hurry up. He's like, did you do anything bad to your brothers? Did you do anything? And I just remember why. So I just kind of just told him 2 things, and he was like, okay, you're good. And then, I just remember it was almost like shuffling out. It wasn't until I was in college that I got my confirmation that I started to understand religion. But by that time, I was already taking world religion classes and exploring different religions too at the same time. But I went along with it because that's what was expected of me. There's certain steps that you have to do. So that was and a lot of guilt and fear went along with it too. But I had a lot of, not a lot of understanding of it also too as a child, because it was in different language. So that's kind of where my religion kind of started from.
Well, mine kind of started when I was young, because I never really had any idea of what religion was, other than it didn't suit me.
Mm.
I knew instantly that it wasn't, you go to churches, and I've been to many churches, gone to many sermons, and I had a hard time being chastised for the things I did wrong. And maybe the person giving the sermon wasn't chastising me or blaming me, but I really felt like that was a blame, that it didn't need to be a part of me, because I didn't believe in that. I believed, and I still do, that my God was loving, my God was filled with light, my God knew everything I was going to do before I ever did it. And I felt that because and this was just a knowing, even as a kid growing up, I knew that I had something greater within me. I knew that if I was going to create these things, that God kind of was experiencing through me. I'm not saying God was wanting to do bad things. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, he knows everything we're going to do, but through each and every one of us, he feels. He knows our emotions. He knows our pain. He knows our joys, so he's in our constant learning. I tried to get into paganism. I tried to get into Wicca, Christianity. There was so many things I tried to do. Catholic, like I told you on the previous episode, they just weren't me. And what I found was that the love within me was my God. That was my religion. I don't care. It's not even really a religion, but it was my center for existing. And I knew that this is exactly what I was creating within me. And it was going to be everything that I had hoped for, that I desired, because I only saw goodness and I wanted only goodness. And I prayed for that goodness. Didn't matter how I got there, but I was bound to determine to do the work that I came here to do, whatever that meant. And people think that because you're, I see myself now more as a mystic. I just forever want to learn. I'm actually getting ready to take courses in Kabbalism. So, I want to learn. I'm now hungry for knowledge, where in my younger years it meant nothing. It meant nothing, but now it means everything to me. But we are so fearful of the religious side, because it's constantly like, well, if you don't do this and you don't say your, what is that? Forgive me if I'm again, we're just talking. The Hail Marys, or what is that? Okay, so if you're going to be there, I've seen this on movies. I'm like, okay, really? I'm going to be damned already? It's like, I don't want that. I don't need that. I damn myself sometimes. I don't need somebody else helping me. I need somebody lifting me out of it. So that's where I chose to walk more of a spiritual journey. Even as a kid growing up, I knew that just wasn't me. And yet I have family that are quite the opposite. And to each his own. I mean, we're all, again, on separate journeys, and we're all here to explore and to learn. And there's no right way or no wrong way to be. Especially when it comes to love, because if you're in this for love, you can't fail. There's no failure. So, but there really is no failure to begin with anyway. We only look at it as failure. And then in reality, we gained insight. And we gained knowledge from it. We grew from it. And we overcame it. Most of the time. So, but that was my way of coming in, is just knowing that I just knew things were different. I didn't know how. It was just a pure knowing for me growing up, and it stayed with me, because again, I knew I wasn't really from here. I mean, of course I'm from my mom and my father, but on a spirit level, I knew I was much more than that. And I had the I Am come to me back in 2010. And when that visit had happened, that voice, the visions, and the love was all inside me. So I knew, even though it was everything, because the I Am said that it was all things, it was inside me too. That's where I felt it. I saw everything else this way, but it was inside that I felt it. And so I knew that that's what I was reaching for. And I stay with that path now, because that is where my heart guides me. I won't go in any other direction. I don't choose to go in any other direction other than to follow my heart.
All right. So we have one perspective from a Catholic background and upbringing. We have one where you weren't really placed into the confines of being highly influenced by religion. And so you were able to kind of, I think, lead with your heart and kind of follow those experiences. I want to share, before I share my story, about a term, it's called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is basically what happens is our brain connects, we have these neurosynaptic connections in our brain. And they're established by patterns of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is we do something enough, those patterns of behavior become sort of natural. And so we no longer have to think it through anymore.
Right.
It just becomes a natural part of our behavior. And so this is how habits are formed. Cognitive dissonance is when we hear something that goes against what we believe to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So when we believe something to be true, our brain, that comes from patterns of behaviors, patterns of belief systems that are mostly developed in our early years. And I'm talking about the physical body right now, because we have to understand that the physical body, our vessels that we're in, we have to align that with our spiritual being in order to be able to live that aligned experience of life. And so if you grew up with patterns of behavior of this is what's expected, this is very a black and white sort of world, there's a right and wrong about things.
Absolutely.
There's morality, there's ethics, there are all these things that create the lens by which we see the world through.
Correct.
Okay, when someone says something different to you that doesn't align with your belief system, your brain kicks in to rejecting the information, even if all of this data is presented to you. That here's a woman who was able to lift a car up and save her daughter who got run over by a car, and you're like, well, that's ridiculous. That couldn't have happened, because that's absolutely, so what happens is you go into protecting your belief system.
Right.
That's cognitive dissonance. And then what I say to folks when I'm teaching is that that cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to grow beyond the experiences and the current knowledge we have to be willing to sit in that discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what hit people is they push away, they turn away, they're like, that's a bunch of bullshit. That is
Right.
not right, that's not true. And so that's what keeps us sort of in the same repetitive patterns that we've grown comfortable with. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's important for us, I think, as we're moving in this direction of understanding our own personal truth,
Mm-hmm.
as we move into the T with the capital, right? The capital T, the highest level of truth
Mm-hmm.
of who we are. Because, and this is a really big one for a lot of us, we have in this physical experience, influenced by religion and an undercurrent of, and I think there's a lot of around power about what is right and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have also, I think, historically made the connection between what's right and what's wrong based on ethics and morality. And she went and did something horrible, and she's Mother Teresa, and look at how wonderful. And so we then judge based on those
Yes.
qualities, those behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so all of this to say, I grew up Catholic, but it was a loose Catholic. It was like, I didn't go on a regular, I went whenever my mom was like feeling she needed to go to and I think in part, one of the big things is that she was divorced, and that was a really not okay thing.
Yeah.
And you could no longer take is it the Eucharist? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
And so we would go on occasion, we would go on the holidays. I definitely did catechism, did not have a good experience because I was too outspoken and questioned too many things. And I, at one point, my mother was told not to bring me back.
Mm-hmm.
And because they were doing revelations. Who the hell does revelations with 9-year-olds?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Seriously. So anyhow, besides the point. So I went down the Catholic journey, did witnesses, like I had mentioned in the previous episode, studied with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I mean, I was baptized in the North Baptist, South Baptist. I mean, I did all, I even went to my best friend was Jewish. And so we went for the high holidays. I mean, I really sought answers. And what my journey into spirituality, which is different, this religious experience, was really releasing the confines of this very black and white perspective of life. And this is what's really hard, because I've come to understand that you and I are the same. You and I are the same at the deepest level of who we are. I am you and you are me.
Right.
One of the practices that I did with Gia, who is my daughter, since the time she was born, we would see people walking down the street, and I would say out loud, you are me and I am you. You are me and I am you. And the reason why for me now, moving in this direction, into really understanding the truth of who I am, the reason I do that is because I want to, at the deepest existence of my being here, recognize that we are all love.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And in the truth of love, there is no judgment. And this is what's hard with religion. Because religion and morality and ethics, that if you are a better person, you're going to be loved by God.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience of helping people cross over once they're done in this physical body, there is no judgment. And that's really hard for people.
It is.
Right. Well, the only person that's judging is yourself. That's the one that you're really having to pay attention to.
And that's that I think that's our way to move into the experience of living in truth, right? Is that constant state of, am I living in truth? But the problem and where the rub is people, and I'm going to say this and it's going to freak people out, when folks do bad things to others, they are still love.
Mm-hmm.
They are still received with love.
Mm-hmm.
And they are still embraced in the same way that someone who we have high regard for in terms of living a just and peaceful and loving existence. So this is what's really hard, because in my perspective, is religion sort of guided and said, this is what's right and what's wrong. Right. So you better damn well do what's right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, but what I've come to understand is that, and I think you mentioned this in the last episode, was that this is all basically soul school, mm-hmm. and we're here to learn. And in that learning, there will be people who do really horrendous acts to others. Mm-hmm. But it's all part of the experience of learning.
And people don't understand that.
It's a hard concept to wrap your mind around.
No, that's cognitive dissonance.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, who wants to come back for that, right?
Right.
But you're going to gain something even more powerful within yourself once you do have an understanding that, you hear people that somebody has killed somebody and they're so angry, but at the last moment they realize that wasn't the answer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so they realized that it was about forgiveness, because the truth is the person that created that act came here to create it. Mm-hmm. The person that became the victim was the one that, to receive, came to learn that too. And I know that sounds harsh, but I mean, we've all had some really bad experiences.
Absolutely.
We all have.
Absolutely.
And so some of us, we're not ready to, to settle and say, okay, we can grow from this. And then there's some of us that says, oh, okay, we're done with this. We've been there. Let's do it. Let's move on. But we don't know that, because, religion teaches us.
Right.
That
especially coming from like a very, like the black and white religion. My early on career, I was a victim advocate. So I did crisis work too as well. And I would see the horrible things that sexual assault victims went through, homicide and suicide, victims went through. And I wasn't out of the closet yet for being an empath, but I knew that's basically the reason why I chose that path. I mean, I was good at my job, but I burnt out very fast with that job. But seeing all of that and being in all of that, you go, how? I just don't understand why this is happening, because coming from where I came from, I questioned. I don't understand. It wasn't until I started doing the end of life doula type of things that I can totally relate to what you're saying. I would get people that, whether if they committed suicide, the only hesitant part that I saw within that whole process is the soul not wanting to cross over.
Because they felt the guilt.
That was their guilt. That was still there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, once you go, there will be none. And every time I helped somebody cross over, there was always that understanding, and there was always that acceptance, no matter what they did in life, like what you were saying. And so I know that's one of the questions that a lot of people ask me, especially if a person has committed suicide. I just had this the other day. Is my loved one, because they committed suicide, are they going to go to heaven? And I'm like, absolutely. Absolutely, because in my experience, every time I've crossed somebody over, they've always been received with love. No matter what, they're God's children.
Even if they don't have family, somebody is there waiting for them to help them across.
Absolutely.
Always. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as each of you were talking, one of the things that sort of came to me is the understanding of contracts. So I kind of want to go into that a little bit because it was something that was a game changer for me. Sacred contracts are agreements that you go into with those who have agreed to help you, and there's a reciprocity. So it's not just you, but to help one another learn particular things in this lifetime. And so this is what I imagined, and I've told this story, I tell this story often because I did come from a traumatic childhood experience. Now I want to say that trauma is subjective. So what that means is that, so you have siblings, lots of siblings. I won't say lots, but one more than I do. And in your experience of your household, what you might experience as traumatic may not be true for like one of your brothers.
Absolutely.
So trauma is dependent, it's subjective. And now we can all agree on the extreme trauma, right? We can extreme, but how we receive, and especially as empaths, as sensitive children, we may experience things that feel abusive to us, even though from the outside perspective, they're like, oh, well, that wasn't abuse, right?
Right.
Okay, so it's important for me to say that because I think a lot of people need to have an understanding that trauma is, some level of trauma is, that affects us, is subjective. So sacred contracts, okay. I imagined when I was in with the panel, and I see a panel of 12. So there's a panel of 12 when we're making the agreement to come back into this physical form. Now, why the hell we choose to do this, I have no idea. I have yet.
Do you want to tell them? Do you want to tell them like about this lifetime? Would you tell me?
So anyway, it's like we're there and we're going, gee, I think it would be fun to go back and
give that to me. I told you I was an overachiever.
Yeah.
Because I probably was like, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, give it to me. Give it to me all.
I can do it.
And the intent really is that we have, and in the Earth experience, and you mentioned this in the last episode, there are a lot of dimensions. In the Earth experience, we choose to come here because we feel all emotions. And it's almost like, in terms of the level of dimensions, it's one of the lower, which means that we put ourselves through hell to grow as a soul.
Right. Well, it's emotional and mental, really, because they're almost like twins.
Right.
Because here's a good example. If you think you have the flu, all of a sudden you're like, oh, God, my stomach's feeling upset, right? But if you turn it around and you're like, oh, God, I feel upset. I wonder if I got the flu. So they walk hand in hand. You're feeding. When you're feeling one, you're feeling the other. And they're constantly getting into the grids and, trying to create chaos when you have to learn to separate them and shut them off and not create them.
Well, and the opposite is true, though, when we're talking about vibration, right, and manifestation. So because those two are interlinked, the mental state of being and the emotional state of being, that's how you manifest, right? So it's yin and yang, right?
Right.
So sacred contract is what I imagine. I'm standing up there and they go, okay, ISELA, who is going to be ISELA because she was a lot of things before, right? What would you like to learn? And I go, I really am still needing to learn how to forgive. And I'm really need to learn how to speak my truth and the value of my worth. Like I need to be able to speak on behalf of the value of my worth. And so they look around at all my soul group, right? And they say, who would like to help ISELA? Right. And so we enter a contract. Okay, thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it. We're going to do this together.
And they're like, we need one more. Nobody else is raising their hand, right? That would be me, by the way. All right, she's going.
Yeah. So then what happens is we enter upon this contract, and it may not be in the first year, it may be in the 20th year, maybe in the 30th year, maybe in the 60th year, but we have a contract to come into one another's existence. But the way it plays out is all in free will.
Yes.
So
free will is very important.
Yeah,
yes.
free will is important. So the way it plays out, so it could be abuse, it could be, physical abuse, it could be sexual abuse, it could be abandonment, it could be someone who just berates you constantly because I want to learn forgiveness. And there's a whole hell of a lot that can fall under forgiveness, right? And so this perspective, when I started to get into the process of healing, it really was, again, going back to the thing I said before, it's that the things happened to me, but they really happened for me. But I agreed upon that before I came in. And that's hard.
It is.
Because folks are like,
I still struggle with it.
But that's why they erase the memory, so that because once you are born, it's like there's some people that do remember all the way even from birth. Can you imagine going through the canal and knowing that? I don't think I would want to.
I think my kids sometimes don't.
Yeah, no, I think more and more children are coming in like that.
He's like, I don't need to do any of this stuff. I already know. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how do you know? He's like, I don't really want to do the work. I've already done it so many times.
That was me.
He comes in like he just doesn't.
That was me. I had no ambition.
He's like, I want to get done with this being a kid and just be the adult.
Yeah,
I came here to do my work and then be done with it. That type of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I have a very impatient child.
When you're doing it over and over and over and over, you're just like, okay, really?
Yeah.
What now? It's like, I'm just saying, it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's hard because you do still come in with some awareness of some sort of memory. You may not just know it like your son, but it might be like somebody taking you to a past life, or you might be like all of a sudden the I am coming, and then I was like the aha comes, and then you start seeing these movies flashing in your past, like, oh my God. And then you realize that you've been doing this so many times, and we come back every single time, because if you're pure energy, you don't get to feel anything. You don't get to be angry, because there's no reason to be angry.
Right.
It's just being. So you don't get to like have the joy and laughter or excuse my thing, but pee your pants or whatever. You don't get any of those experiences in the when you're in this collective consciousness. You just get to, remember we were talking about this morning earlier when I was telling you about all that.
I was very disappointed.
She wanted to have sex somewhere else. Anyway,
Angel told me that there's no sex in the afterlife, and I was really disappointed.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's why we keep coming back, because it's an opportunity. Even though we don't like the things that are happening, like I'm constantly saying, I don't ever want to be in the dark again, ever again, because I've been there. I choose to only be in light, and that's what I pray for, and that's all I might want to be, and I choose it. But it's like, I might be saying that right now, up until the day I die, and guess what? That next life, they'll say, Angel, look, this is what we got for you. If you can take it or leave it. If I want to come back, what am I going to do? Chances are I'm going to take it.
I've decided this is my last go around.
I love that. I love that.
I decided that. I decided that so many years ago. This is my last go around.
No, if I come back, I want to be a healer every single time. I love doing it.
My last go around. I don't really.
That's what she's like. I'm tired of this shit.
No.
I love it. I love it.
So get a tattoo. Every time you come back. 14, 15.
I think I'm in like the 500s at this point.
Right.
I'm like so done.
But I agree with you what you said about the contract. I think when my eyes opened up to that, and I think we had this conversation about my kiddo, and you said, Tina, you have to realize that in past life, he was your caregiver.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's your turn to be his caregiver. You guys have been in each other's lives, in past lives many times. And it really kind of put a perspective. And also with when you say to me, for me, and, I agree to this, whenever I look at sometimes when it's a hard day or what have you, I have to remind myself with that too. And what Angel says, what can I take away from this? how can I learn from this?
Yeah.
Even on my hardest days when I go, oh, I can't do this anymore, those type of things.
So when I learned for my journey into spiritual awareness, it was really looking at those difficult, I think, not only experiences, but people that I was contracted to be in a relationship with. I really had to come to the place and the awareness of being truly forgiving. And the forgiveness for me is like to retell the story of what happened, right? Now, I might have an emotional experience from that, but the emotional experience doesn't override my understanding of why it happened. And that's where wisdom comes into play. And so,
is that where I'm just question? Is that where you moved to being an observer?
Yeah. So then I can see the purpose of it all. And even if I'm telling the story and I start to cry about it, it's because it's a sad story. That little girl shouldn't have been treated that way. It's a sad story. But I'm able to understand how all of that is sort of interwoven into the experiences I needed to have in order to get to this place today.
Really, and that's more like shadow work, because you're going very deep and clearing out those markers.
And so that forgiveness piece, for me, has been completely and totally freeing, because forgiveness is never about the other person. Forgiveness is always about ourselves.
Absolutely.
And when I was able to finally forgive my mother, I really, and the last time I saw her, I had anticipated, I didn't know how I was going to, because I haven't seen her in, I don't know, over 20 years, near 30 years. And I was afraid of how I was going to respond, because the time prior that I had seen her, I did have an emotional reaction to it. And I have to tell you, I was at complete peace. I was at complete and total peace with seeing her and not having an emotional response to that, because I recognized the significant role she would have in my life.
Right.
And I can not only recognize it, but can appreciate it, because if it wasn't for that experience, as difficult as it was, I wouldn't be here now,
right,
in the awareness that I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we fulfilled the contract. And I released her of being responsible within that contract. I released her from the contract and thanked her for that, energetically. Another thing I want to talk about, because we're talking about religion and spirituality, what's interesting is, growing up Catholic, we're often said that when you hear spirit, or when you hear things, it's the work of the devil, not the work of God, right? Because God only talks to priests and nuns, and maybe not even the nuns.
And you can only pray to God, but if God answers
well, here's what I want to say about that, okay? Because this is the thing that I had really struggled with, is that it's okay for you to pray, right? And you're expected to pray. And they even give you prayers to say.
Yes, they do.
But if you start to hear someone speak back to you, then that's the devil.
Absolutely.
That is not God or
confusing.
Angels. Yeah. And you know what was really interesting? When my great-grandmother died, a black bird came and sat on the windowsill. And we had this really strong belief systems around animals showing up, or things showing up with messages. My grandmother used to talk about visiting other people at night. And so I grew up with all of that. And so I didn't understand how we could believe that the bird was communicating, but the moment we say an angel is talking to me, well, you're nuts.
Exactly.
That's the devil talking to you.
Yes.
And so it really, I think, paralyzes us to lean into who we truly are. All of us are intuitive.
Right.
Everyone.
Well, it's been centuries and centuries. I mean, even as far back as the Bible, and even before then, people that have had abilities have always been created to be the dark people, the dark souls, the dark spirits, and they're evil. But that's not the case. I mean, even if you read the Bible, it does state that these gifts are there and God does grant them. So for somebody to make a judgment of that is not really they're being hypocrites. One, I mean, I hate to say that, and I'm probably going to get hate mail for this one, but it's being very hypocritical, because the truth is the whole Bible was written on prophets and seers and those that could hear and see. So, but yet all these new things are coming into the world. You have CBD stores, you have, all these things coming in, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is the thing. You got to do this, you got to do this. But somebody comes to us and it's like, oh no, don't go to them. Mm-hmm. What is that about? What is that about? Are they so scared of the truth? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some that really are not in their best light, but the truth is that is for that individual person that is having that experience to discern and to grow with. Not every one of us are on that path of creating, or misguiding. Mm-hmm. Most of us are here to bring light into the world and to bring healing into the world, however we can do it through the abilities. So I'm sorry if I cut you off on that. No. I just feel like it needed to be touched on that.
What I find really interesting as I'm listening to the both of you, because I think you say gifts and abilities, both of you use that interchangeably.
Yeah. Because, I say gifts sometimes, but mostly I usually try to say abilities, because everybody has them. Everybody has gifts. To me, gifts would be like, oh, God just gifted you that. No, you already had it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't.
Mine changes though too. So it depends on who comes to me and what their needs are.
Exactly.
And what comes out.
I don't think it changes though. I think
it's what that person needs.
Yeah, I think that's what becomes clearer for you.
Maybe I'm easier to go to receive that information, because it could be, either I am doing an end of life type of reading for them, or somebody might come in there, like for instance, one person came in and they wanted to connect with somebody. Ended up, she was pregnant, and we spoke about her, her pregnancy and that she was pregnant and things like that. So it just depends on what their needs are at that time.
It's always gonna, you're always going to have like cross circuits to where you think you're going to be stuck on this one and you're going this path, and all of a sudden someone's going to, no, we need to go there. Mm-hmm. So they're going to put you in this one, and then it's almost like a switchboard. Let's put that in here, let's put that one in here, and that's what's going to be available for you for that person. I mean, I think it's fascinating what we can do. And I wish I was fully, completely, 100% aware of everything, but in a positive way. You know what I mean? And because as a matter of fact, in the future, near future, I'll be bringing a very ancient energy from thousands and thousands of years ago into the present.
Mm-hmm. I find it interesting because I don't use those terms. I don't use those terms very often at all. And I think it's because, as I was sitting here trying to think of, why? And I think it's because it kind of leans into what you were saying. I think that we are all aspects of God. Mm-hmm. And that's what universal truth is. That's what God means to me. God is, it's all the words combined. So what I mean by that, it's Buddha, it's Jesus, mm-hmm. It's every spiritual sort of perspective that you could have is part of what God is, and that's inclusive of you and me and all. So if I am a unique aspect of God, I inherently have the ability to lean into my intuition, to look past this time and space, to be able to know the truth of who I am. Even when we look at angels and guides, they are also a part of the collective. Mm-hmm. So angels and guides show up for us as a way for us to get to the point of that deepest awareness. Mm-hmm. But in truth, they exist the way we exist. Mm-hmm. And why I always get fearful about this, saying stuff, is because I'm not talking about narcissism. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about like I am God and like I am the righteous one. It's not that. It is it's the unlayering. And in my program, I'm going to talk about the onion thing, but it's the unlayering of all the crap to get, and all the tools we use and we've got lots of tools and angels and guides and all that.
And tools is a good
They're
word
all
for it too.
tools to pull us in the truth of who we are. And when we're in truth, and that means that when we, and it's not happiness. That's oftentimes we're like reaching, trying to be happy. That's what I've tried for a long time. It's
not.
peace. And love is peace, and peace is love. And then when I can reach into that space of love, I can choose how to feel in any given moment. It's not dependent on circumstances any longer. So I can live in the space, I call it space of neutrality. So I can live in that space without the impact of what is happening because I have clarity in that space. So it's interesting. So, you know, when I was talking about that black and white, people who do bad things, people who, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
We are all the same. And yeah, that's a huge, I think folks really struggle with that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they struggle with what we do. I mean,
Yeah.
they really do. I mean, here, even at the shop, there'll be times that somebody be walking by and they'll be looking right till, because, you know, 'cause my windows are tinted.
Right.
And so they'll be walking, as soon as they hit the glass, they hurt and walk this way. And then then they're normal again. It's like, oh my God, what do you think you're going to see in there? You know, it's amazing how they do that.
That's amazing that, I mean, intellectually I get it. I've done this work for so long that and the people I surround myself are like-minded, right? For the most part. And so I forget that there's so much fear around, I think, this idea of spiritual belief systems, believing in angels, connecting with guides. You know, even like I remember a couple years ago, there's a big push in our school systems to do more mindfulness training, right? And to help kids really learn to be present.
Right.
So there's this big movement. And I remember an administrator of a school was talking to me about attending. And so she went and she came back and she said, it was great. However, the other people who were attending the session were really upset or were pushing back. They were required to attend by their principal, and that they were really upset because they felt like it was an agenda that was trying to be pushed on them, and that it had a religious underpinning to it. And I'm thinking, this is mindfulness. This is like being present, like I am here with her. I am here. My mind and my thoughts are aware of my surroundings and not worried about the things that are not happening in front of me. That's basically, right? And I'm like, how could that be connected to an agenda and an underpinning of religion?
Because of fear.
I know. It's just
because of fear. The fear of the unknowing, the fear of, I mean, it just boils down to fear. What is that space going to look like? They don't know.
Yeah.
No,
and
they
I
don't.
think there's a lot of fear in that.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, if you look at my office, I got a statue of Jesus. I got a statue of Mother Mary. I got a Buddha, and I have Kuan Yin. I have angels.
Yeah.
Because I don't worship them, but what I see in each one of them gives me, like, for instance, Buddha reminds me. But this is for me, okay? Buddha for me is to be mindfulness and meditate.
Right.
Mother Mary reminds me to be in love with myself. Jesus reminds me that I am powerful and I need to stand for what I believe in. Do you see what I mean? And Kuan Yin, she is the greatest gift of bringing to the world. Do you see what I mean? So I see these statues as inspiration to help me remember. Oh, you didn't meditate today. Thank goodness you saw that Buddha day.
So I want to lean into that a little bit with you, because I think what you're actually saying is they are a mirror for the truth of who you are.
Yeah,
that's what sounds.
So that's really what it is, because
but I don't worship them.
Because there isn't the worship in that.
Yeah,
because it's that coming from that place of true knowing, right?
Yeah,
my yard looks like that.
Yeah.
So I've got Happy Buddha.
Yeah.
I got Saint Francis.
Saint Francis.
He's in my yard. I've got and
Yeah.
it's the same. It's a mirror of who I truly am.
And to remember that, because again, you're right. It's like you said earlier. It's about remembering.
Right.
It's because they're not there to worship. They're there to help you remember these. Look, guys. Did you forget something today?
Yeah.
It's like.
And I think
find
Jesus
yourself.
is a really good example of that, because Jesus showed up in that truth of love.
Yes.
And so in that truth of love, because only love is real, right? That's a whole nother episode. Only love is true and only love is real. He showed up in physical form, which is why we call it Christ consciousness. There are lots of different consciousnesses.
Right.
We call it Christ conscious because it is the experience here. And he showed up to be that model for us, not for any other reason. And we've attached all these other stories that make him more powerful then. And this is another big one. He is simply our brother. He is simply our brother who showed up in the way that we, again, mirror, right? Aspire to show up in truth.
Well, I mean, if you go by what it said in the Bible about him, you know, having to do the 40 days of, you know what I mean? Basically, he was soul searching. And he had to go through a lot of obstacles. And that's what we do. We have a lot of obstacles. He's shown us the way of his way. But I guarantee you they didn't mention anything about him studying Buddhism or anything. I mean, there was nothing brought up of that. But I have read other books that state that he did do that.
I think in part it's the unlayering that I talk about a lot. It's the what is truth, and each one of us is going to have a different journey and a different experience of that. All right, so we're coming up on time, and as we close today, any final thoughts or reflections that you want folks to walk away with?
Just remember that you're the best person that you can be. Stop being hard on yourself, no matter if you're depressed or if you're angry or you're hurting. You're going to get through it. You can. You always do. You've gotten this far, so you're right on track. Trust that. And just know that you're wonderful. You're like, if nobody told you I love you, I'm going to tell you right now, I love you. You're awesome. Okay?
Oh, I agree. I think that we're here to, sometimes I wonder with everything going on in the world, and the only thing that gives me hope is that we're learning compassion for each other. Even if I see things that are not good that are going on, I'm hoping that the takeaway from all of that is connecting back together.
Yeah.
And showing compassion for each other from all of this. And I think that Angel is right. Be patient with yourself. It's just a moment in time. And this whole vast, it's just a moment in time. And just try to recognize the other person. That I think you're the one who said, correct me if I'm wrong, the God within, and looking at that in each one of and if you start recognizing that, it really opens up your understanding of being able to be accepting and to be able to, another term is no better, no worse, that type of thing. And that is your brother, that is your sister, that is your, loved one. It's human. It is a human compassion. So I think if we all just go back and return to that, it would be a little bit easier. That's my takeaway from it.
Yeah. For me, I think one of the terms that I use quite often is wholeheartedness. And the way to get to wholeheartedness, and I'll describe what that is in a second, the way to get to wholeheartedness is to release judgment. Now, religion taught me to judge, as did my family, some cultural experiences. Judgment was just by how we engaged with one another, and for whatever reason, we felt that we had the right to judge others. And whether it be behavior, beliefs, practices, whatever. So the process of ended up being a pattern of my experience. So I go right to the space of judgment. If you just notice how many times you judge, whether it's what someone's wearing, what they say, what you see on TV, as you're driving down the street, what's the story you're telling yourself? When we get to the place of releasing judgment, because there's two parts to judgment. It's not only judgment outside of ourselves, but judgment within. because we're as hard on ourselves as we are of others.
Mm-hmm.
So when we begin to release the experience of judgment, we can come to the place of being wholehearted. And so that's kind of what you're talking about with compassion, is that when we are wholehearted, and then when we are wholehearted, we can exude compassion and understanding for others. There are lots of things happening in the world, and we can say what's right, we can say what's wrong, we can put some ethics and morality around it. And I'm one of those people right now that step into the experience of fighting for racial equality and justice. I do that in a lot of the work that I'm doing. So it's not to say not to do that. What it is to say that we can show up understanding that there's a divine purpose for why things are happening, and that we have agreed to be the light in those experiences.
Yes.
And we have agreed to be show up wholeheartedly, to extend love, and to come from a place of non-judgment, but to come from a place of understanding. So we are ending, and do you have any information or contact information that you would like folks to know if they want to get a hold of you?
Okay, well, again, I'm Angelique Clarke. You can reach me at the shop at Emeraldheart at 623-248-6435. Or you can go to our website, and there's a link that will direct you to me. I am an intuitive and healer, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you.
I'm Tina, and you can reach me at Trinity Rose Healing Arts. You can also look at the link below and click on my bio to learn more about me and services that I offer, and I hope that we connect.
And I am Dr. ISELA GARCIA, and I offer, I do readings, all kinds of readings. Intuitive readings. I also do some mediumship. You know what I do different than you do? You do a lot of psychic work, and I don't do as much psychic work.
Yeah, well, that was me, though, because I didn't want to do the mediumship.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't want that, I don't want that. And that was a
Okay.
big mistake, because then they started coming in all the time. I was like, okay, so what you don't want, you do get.
But I will tell you that I actually set those parameters. So even though I might lean into psychically what may or may not happen, because I don't practice that on a regular, I just, and I've got my own reasons why I don't do that. You do get to choose. You get to choose what resonates most with you. And I think in your case, when you say no, I think you have contracted that no meant yes. I did.
You reverse that.
I did.
So I think that's all part of your contract. But I do mediumship, and really am about connecting at the soul level and figuring out what is it that might be your next step, and what might that look like for you. You can reach me at iselagarcia.com, and that link will be down below as well. So we thank you very much for being a part of this journey with us, and we hope that you continue to look for our videos. And the way that you will be notified is if you go to our YouTube page, subscribe, like what you see, sign up for our newsletter on our website, which is embracingsoulsjourney.com, and every time a new video will come out, you will be notified. So thank you all very much, and have a fabulous week.
Yeah, have a great one.